Okay.
Yes.
So we have with us today Shakko Shorkar. Shakko is an experienced researcher, and right now he's a faculty in a US university. But I'll probably let Shakko give an introduction, and then we will probably get to know more from him about what he has been researching on, and how those research and what are the application areas of his research, and how his overall research journey has been. So over to Shakko. Shakko,
Yeah,
if you
thanks
can,
so much.
yeah, give us a
Yeah.
little bit of introduction about
So,
yourself.
yeah, I am Sakya and I am a faculty at Tulane University at New Orleans, and I just completed my PhD from University of Southern California in May, which is not even 6 months now. And as I told you, I work in finance, and my apart from teaching, which which every university faculty has to do, I also do research, and my research is mostly on corporate finance. And I have looked at how mergers influence, firm value. Like there has been this, big debate in finance that whether diversifying mergers, which are between firms in operating across different industries, whether they are good or bad, because it's easy to argue that firms which are operating in the same industry, they might have some synergies, and it's useful for them to merge. But a lot of the mergers that we see are between firms which operate in very different industries, and it's hard to come up with a logic to defend such mergers. So
Okay.
one theory which has been spoken around a lot is called coinsurance. It says that like by merging, firms can reduce their primary risk of default, because if one firm is doing badly, the other can help it out, and vice versa. So what I actually do is that I test that model out empirically. I use what is called a structural model, which helps me estimate the exact quantity of default risk which is reduced by these mergers. And I use stock market data to estimate my model, and give you projections of the savings from reduction in default risk, and what's the value gain from that. So
So if you
what
if
I
you if you, if
find
you so
is,
if you can
yeah,
correct me, sorry. So if you can correct me, so it is a lot of mathematics. It's what it sounds like, right?
yeah, it's a bit of mathematics, because that's something I like. So I kind of yeah, I agree with you. It's a bit of math. It's a little quantitative. Yeah.
Okay, and so how did you start? So what I mean, how has the journey been like? So so you passed out of IIT, right? So
Right, correct.
so you what was your discipline, right? So you were in which discipline in IIT Kharagpur?
I did my bachelor's and master's, which is called a dual degree in biotechnology, which is also called biotechnology and biochemical engineering. So I finished that, and then when I after that I went for my PhD at University of Southern California.
Okay, so, but then that was quite a switch, right, from kind of a biotech to something more quantitative within finance. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like? Was it like, I mean, and the fundamentals, obviously, in science and any kind of discipline which borders around science, which is finance, even must have fundamental similarities. But what was your experience?
So like it took me, like it's yes, you're right. Like it's a big switch from biotech to finance. But doing a quantitative degree, and the benefits of doing an engineering degree is, among other things, you learn how to improvise. So that was one of the experiences which helped me. Then I learned some, I won't say very rigorous math, but I learned a lot of applied math at IIT. So that kind of helped me in my PhD. But what I lacked was really, I lacked the knowledge of economics, which
Mm-hmm.
is very central to finance. So that I had to learn, like in a big way. And also I didn't have much of institutional knowledge of like how institutions work, how financial institutions are. So these things I had to pick up while I was in my PhD program. And this took me over almost 2 to 3 years just doing that, doing coursework, and even outside coursework, reading books and internalizing those things.
Mm-hmm.
And after that came the research part, and the research part was, that was something which I had already gained 3 years of experience in finance. So I had seen what kind of problems are important, and then that's what helped me formulate the problem. So yes, in a nutshell, it was a little bit of struggle, and it's not exactly the kind of background most people doing PhD in finance would come from. But at the end of the day, if you're interested really, and if you're driven by a desire to learn and to solve questions of your liking, then I think it's not that difficult.
Right.
If you're willing to persist. Yeah.
And you must have done some amount of not research, but probably some amount of work related to like biotech in IIT, which was towards your thesis, and maybe somewhat of research. And now that you have done so extensive like research in the US, any fundamental difference which you can point out, or what you would suggest? I mean, as in what was your experience?
So, since I didn't do my PhD in India, it won't be fair of me to say, to claim that these are the differences. But nevertheless, I had the opportunity to do my master's, which had a significant research component. And, I had spent a lot of time working in the labs. So first, I'll tell you the difference between biotech research and finance research, and then I'll tell you the difference between US research and Indian research. Is that fine?
That should be fine.
Okay, so the big difference between biotech and finance is biotech is a lot about experiment, going to the wet lab, doing things, those kind of, and that's one of the things which I didn't like much. My core competency was more quantitative, and I felt that finance was a much better avenue to channel my skills, like quantitative skills.
Right.
Whereas, biotech involves a lot of repetitive experiment. So that was one difference. And then if you ask for the cultural difference, I would say the big difference between US and India is that in US, you and only you are responsible for your actions. Like there's a lot of sense of, like a lot of individual responsibility. Like you do something, you get credit for that. You don't do something, you face the blame for that. Whereas in India, I think there is more collective responsibility. You work in a team. At the end of the day, I think one of the biggest cultural differences I felt was India. Like there's such a strong hierarchy. Like you say your advice, you don't say it's advisor, you say it's guide. So in US there is no such thing as guide. So it's just an advisor. His job is to give you advice. It's your job to actually do the thing. Whereas in India, I think that's my impression, and I may be wrong here, that your advisor or your guide tells you what to do and you implement that. So yes, of course there are differences in some in US settings. Some professors might be more, more willing to lend out a hand and help. So I'm not. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that in US they are not helpful, and that's not my claim. But it's just the difference is that the responsibility lies with you. So that's one of the differences. And the second difference I think is, like in the US, I think the PhD program involves a lot of coursework, at least in my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas I think in India you would start doing research from the very, very beginning. So that's one of the big differences. Like, I don't know, that might be just a discipline-specific view that I have. But I think that's one of the big differences between US PhD programs and not only India, most non-US PhD programs, also in Europe, where people try to do research from day one. Whereas in US, you get significant time to do coursework. So one downside of that might be you might feel that you are spending more time in a PhD program in the US because you are spending a significant time doing coursework. But at least my impression, my interpretation of that is that it's an investment, like once you do the coursework, your broad view of the field, it helps you a lot in the long run. Whereas if you just compartmentalize yourself from the very beginning, that's not, then your skills will be very specific to that city.
Makes sense.
So that's it.
Makes sense. So now I think we got a good understanding and how your journey has been, and what are the sort of differences between the Indian scenario and how the things in US work. Obviously, in a very brief manner. Probably just give us 1 minute. I'll probably take a break and we'll come back to this. Okay, so now this maybe the other question which I had in my mind, which I wanted to ask you, was so like finance is like broadly, mathematics, economics, as you said, institutional knowledge. So I wanted to touch upon the mathematics part. So what kind of mathematics was useful, and now there's a lot of talk about econometrics, analytics, and stuff like that. So what kind of mathematics was there in financial work which you did, and if you can tell us a little bit about the like what how that can, I mean, what are the application areas of that kind of mathematics, and also if in your knowledge, and also the lastly, if you can touch upon uh, so maybe what are the application areas of your overall research. So maybe I have just combined a lot of questions in one go. So maybe let's start with what kind of mathematics you
Domains.
dealt with. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think as you said, econometrics is a big area which uses a lot of math. So econometrics, bases upon a bit of probability theory and also a bit of linear algebra, and then it, goes for, specific statistical applications of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my dissertation, I used a lot of stochastic calculus, which is very similar to normal calculus, but the only difference is, in the kind of calculus that we do, our variables are continuous,
Mm-hmm.
and it's continuous everywhere, right? And then you do integrals with respect to that.
Right.
Whereas with stochastic calculus, you have, if you have functions which are not differentiable,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like in the traditional sense, but you still come up with laws, and these are really random variables, and you differentiate with respect to those, non-differentiable in the traditional sense.
Right.
And that's how that's an entirely new field. It's called stochastic calculus. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's very useful for me, and it's used a lot in option pricing. So in my dissertation, I used it a little bit, and also a little bit of numerical analysis, Monte Carlo simulation, those kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't think the mathematics is super difficult or anything. It is the kind of level that I have worked in, but it's just like in IIT, when I was doing engineering, I spent a lot of time doing Laplace transform, Fourier transforms. So
Yeah.
that you don't use that much.
Okay.
But I took PD classes in IIT, so that turned out to be useful. Like I come across a lot of PDs. So
By
yeah,
P,
like
P
partial
so
differential
by PDs,
equations.
yeah, partial differential equations. Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
what kind of tools have you used for that? I mean, like you do that. I mean, I'm sure you don't do that. In pen and paper. So what kind of tools are really useful?
So like you do a little bit of for simulations, you use MATLAB, or in my case, I just use SAS because that's very useful for data manipulation, and I like to use one platform, so I use SAS.
Okay.
Other than that, numerical solutions, I think you MATLAB as it's optimized for those kind of things. So MATLAB is useful. Yeah. So that's pretty much what I used.
Okay, okay. Now that you have, like, you're a faculty now. So, do you have any coursework where a lot of mathematics is being used, or like, is it a part of your course now, as in what the classes which you take?
Yes and no. Like I teach masters investments course. Investments is like one of the most core courses in finance,
Mm-hmm.
and I teach that to master students. So yes, I do use some math. Like some matrix algebra, some like mean variance analysis, which is like a little bit of statistics also, some
Mm-hmm.
regressions, those kind of stuff. So I don't know. Like I won't call it a very it's not cutting edge maths obviously, but yeah, you need to it's all the basic tools that you need, like undergraduate math,
Okay, okay.
statistics, calculus, those kind of stuff.
Very interesting, very interesting. So, lastly, I think I wanted to keep this short for you. I know you're busy, so probably if you can touch upon the application areas of your research overall, and if you can give us a vision, like what are people in your area thinking about, and how this might influence the society, or this point of time, what are the industrial applications or more futuristic things which are happening in your research area?
Yeah, this question whether firms, how firms should organize themselves. This is a pretty old question, but the question is still relevant. I don't know if you know, like there's a lot of talk about breaking up Yahoo, and you just saw a few days back how Google restructured itself into Alphabet. So these kind of questions plug organizations all the time, like how they should structure themselves. Should they break up the divisions into individual firms, or if those firms should merge? And this is happening at a continuous scale. Like firms keep merging, firms keep demerging or spinning off and those kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope my research addresses those questions, whether it's optimal for firms to split off or whether it's optimal for them to merge. And this is a question which is important not only to managers for the monetary aspect. It's also important for the society in certain ways because doing mergers creates a lot of disruptions, both in positive and negative sense. People lose jobs. Sometimes people gain jobs also, and and if these merger decisions are optimal, it might be also good for the economy in the long run. Right. So that's how it touches, the life of the common people. So
okay.
So yeah, that would be how my research is, it's how it touches the lives of common people.
Okay, and yeah. Any other application areas of your field which you want to touch upon, as in maybe not something which you have extensively worked upon, but some exciting areas which people are working on nowadays, maybe like youngsters might be interested to know about.
Yeah, nowadays there's a lot of topic, and this is not just finance, especially in economics. There's a lot of talk about inequality, like social outcomes in which some people are very rich, some are not. So I think a lot of research in finance, not like corporate finance as such, but are asking questions whether like this inequality is something which we is it good for the society, or or if it's not good, is there some way we can deal with that, without affecting the economy? Because if you tax people too much, you disincentivize them from working hard. It's like if I tell you, it's like I am teaching a course and I say that whatever score you get, I'll give everyone a B. Then the guys who are getting A's, they have no incentive to work, right?
Yeah.
So that's not good for the learning. So similarly with the economy, like we don't want to create a situation where like there is no incentive to working hard or incentive to innovate. But at the same time, we want to like we don't want some people to lag far behind and some being too rich. Mm-hmm. So this is one area where I think that some research is being directed. Other than that, this is the social aspect I was talking about. And other than that, in core finance, we're still struggling to understand, like what really drives, what the relationship between return and risk. We have nicely well-developed theories, but those don't work very well in the data. And a lot of work is still being done trying to understand what really decides, which stock prices should go up and which shouldn't. So these are areas I think would young people would find some application in those.
Okay, thank you, Shako, for your time, and maybe we'll end here today, but we'll keep this conversation going, and maybe again take a little bit of your precious time and maybe discuss on some other topics or maybe your research area in more detail. It's a pleasure talking to you, and I hope if some more people would get to know about your experience, I think that will definitely help them. I'm sure this is very useful for a lot of wider audience.
Sure. Thank you, Oliver. I'm happy to help. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks a lot.